sunny, well, actually dark, cold, Winterbourne in the middle of Berkshire. And I'm going to be talking about how to become a thought leader in health tech and life sciences. This is something we help clients do, and it's something we have been studying. My background for context is I run Articulate Marketing, and we have been doing thought leadership for companies like Google and Microsoft, and latterly health tech companies for the last 25 years. And we also build websites and help with marketing automation and with brand strategy. So I'm talking with some experience, I hope, here, but also I'm talking based on the research done by my brilliant colleague Madeline Saunders, who has prepared this report, which is in which she analysed nearly 500 health tech and life sciences websites and looked at their thought leadership and the kinds of things that they did and what made them stand out. It's an extremely interesting report if you're in this sector, and also interesting to know if you're on the list. If you have any questions about this, please get in touch with me. My email address is matthew@articulatemarketing.com. I'd love to hear from you. There's no live chat on this meeting because I don't get producer support and I have to do this all myself and juggle all the various windows and things. But you could also download this report from this URL. And if you're watching this and you've signed up for the webinar, either live or pre-recorded later or after today, Wednesday, the 14th of Jan, we'll send you a link to this as well. So this is the detailed thing, and what I'm talking about in today's webinar is a sort of summary of the findings and recommendations. I've already given you my email address, and genuinely I'd love to hear from you. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. There are very few Matthew Stibbers, and my picture looks like me, and there's like two others in the world. So look me up on LinkedIn or book a meeting with me. Articulatemarketing.com/meet. Love to speak to you, talk about anything that's in this remit or in the other areas that we work in. Very much happy to look at your website, look at your thought leadership and content, and give you an opinion and some ideas. Okay, so let's get to it. Oh no, one last parish notice. Sorry. There are quite a lot of other webinars that I've presented in the last few months, some of which, including last week's What Great Thought Leadership Looks Like in 2026, are very relevant to the topic of thought leadership, but are not sector specific. Brand Voice similarly. All of these can be found and available pre-recorded on articulatemarketing.com/webinars. And there are more webinars coming, so watch this space. Right, now let's get to it. So I'm going to be talking about what we found in our report and what leaders do in the thought leadership space in health tech and life sciences. So Mads analysed these sort of 480 odd websites, and we identified the top 5, top 10, top 20, read the report, but the things that the best thought leaders do in the sector. First of all, they bring their expertise. So in the top 5, 4 of the top 5 had named, identifiable, obvious subject matter experts authoring bylined articles. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be writers or they have to do all the legwork of writing. A good content team can interview people, can turn podcasts, webinars, interviews into thought leadership that can be bylined and reviewed by somebody without necessarily laboriously being written by somebody. Also, they have accessible content. So every one of these top 5, and indeed this is all good recommendations for anyone producing thought leadership, they were consistently linking to the supporting evidence and credible sources and references, so that the information they were sharing was not only their thought leadership, but the content and the links behind it, the supporting information behind it, was accessible. They also shared high quality backlinks. So 3 out of the 5 of the top 5 had more than 10,000 backlinks to their content, including links from very high authority websites. This is hugely important for SEO. It's hugely important for AI search. And these kinds of backlinks are earned. And if you're trying to get them by doing spammy SEO backlink building techniques, that can backfire quite badly. If you try and get them by doing spammy AI sort of slop, that can also backfire quite badly. So the credibility, the expertise, authority, trustworthiness, experience is shining through. 4 of the 5 provide writer and editor profiles, including qualifications, memberships, and other publications. So they're doing some of the things that more serious academic publishers do, but also things that good, trustworthy journalism sites do, which is, here's who wrote it, here's the team behind it, here's what else they've written. So you can validate that. These are important parts of trust building. But they're not necessarily writing in the same style as they might for The Lancet or the New England Journal of Medicine. They're writing content that is for real readers and for their potential customers, not necessarily for a peer audience of academics and scientists or medical people. So some of these sites serve B2C audiences, some B2B audiences. They've been through a clear editorial process of who is our audience, what are they interested in, what can we talk to from our platform, and deliberately gone and targeted those audiences with the right kind of content. And I think that's a really important aspect too. It's very dangerous. I think I've often talked about the man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror problem, which is somebody in particularly a startup or something like that has a lot of domain expertise, but they think that the people who are going to buy their software, their service, their product is like them. So they're interested in medical or technical or scientific information. Not necessarily. Okay, so these things are, I think, fundamental to good quality thought leadership, whether it's in health tech or elsewhere. Why does it matter commercially? Well, there's a payoff. I mean, there's a tangible benefit that you can measure in dollars. We use a tool called Ahrefs, and it basically tells you the SEO impact, the traffic that you get from your organic search results and increasingly AI search. If you had to buy that traffic for those keywords from Google Ads, how much would it cost? And on average, our top 5 were getting more than $100,000 a month worth of free traffic that if they had to advertise to get that traffic would cost a lot of money. So, it is clearly worth for them to spend money on content to get that traffic, right? It's another way of doing it. And possibly it's traffic they wouldn't necessarily get through advertising. There's particularly increasingly with AI, you can't buy your way into AI search at the moment. So they also had, on average, nearly 4,000 Google AI citations, which is a big number because when we look at the majority of websites at the moment, when we sit with this tool, we see sort of under 10 citations typically, and often no citations at all. So this is an indicator that a site is not being picked up by Google AI mode or by ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever. 4,500, 5,000, fantastic. It means when people are asking their AI tool a question, these sites are being cited, quoted, linked to. So worth doing, and measurably so once you get to a certain volume of traffic and a certain volume of thought leadership. Not to mention all the benefits in sales and engagement and trust and credibility and positioning and messaging, but yeah. So let's talk about some of the things that the leaders in our research are doing. And one of the clearest differentiators is their expert authorship and review. So having people who are subject matter experts inform, write, ghostwrite, edit, review the content. the highest ranked brands did not rely on ChatGPT to write their content. They did not rely on overworked battery farm copywriters frantically searching PubMed. They're weaving in the expertise of doctors, clinical practitioners, specialists, engineers, scientists, not necessarily, as I said, requiring them to become writers, but the writers are going and getting that input. For example, Everly Well uses board certified physicians, pharmacists, and so on, and other professionals like nutritionists and therapists. Greenlight Guru has engineers authoring pieces about regulatory and technical topics. Simple Practice does have lay writers, but they also work with clinicians, the kind of people who are part of their customer base. So this is important for credibility. It's important for what Google calls EEAT, expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness, which are ranking factors and signals that content is high quality and therefore worth linking to. And when you're talking about life sciences and medical health tech type businesses, it's highly likely, if it's in the B2B space, that the audience is highly technical and sophisticated, and they're looking for expertise. They're looking for the reassurance that this is the real deal and not some sort of hyped up thing that is unsubstantiated. So bringing this expertise and showcasing it is a way of building that confidence. There is also, alongside the scientific rigor and expertise, there's also editorial rigor. So they're backing up claims with well-cited research. They're doing peer-reviewed studies. They've got robust editorial standards. They're doing things like writing the content and editing it well so that it's easy to read on the page and it's properly structured and it has useful images and illustrations. They're adding value. For example, if they're taking proprietary research, they're turning it into information that's accessible to lay readers without necessarily hyping it up or sort of shortcutting the underlying meaning of it. They're aligning with government regulations and frameworks. They have transparent editorial processes. And a lot of this stuff is good writing. A lot of this stuff is good marketing. A lot of this stuff is good journalism. And I have a bugbear about this. I go on about it quite a lot, but we live in an era where these kinds of things are increasingly mistrusted. You hear this phrase mainstream media, but mainstream media have these processes in place, and I would rather read an article in the New York Times that has some editorial discipline and rigor to it and fact checkers than some podcast of somebody like me just opinionating about something without backing it up. I used to write for Wired years and years and years ago, and I know what it's like being on the receiving end of a really high quality professional fact checking team. Short articles of 200 words would get sort of 1,000 words of questions. Where did you get this fact from? How can you prove it? Can you give us 2 independent sources? So I know what it's like in those organizations. And that is important, not just for legal protection, but actually it's important to make sure that the quality and the trustworthiness is there, especially in the world of health, where misinformation is on the rise and has real human consequences, and people are making important commercial, medical, personal decisions on the basis of information they find online. So strict editorial rigor and scientific rigor is valuable and important as part of thought leadership. Backlinks is a part of marketing, part of SEO that's critical. And good quality backlinks from reputable sites are earned by good quality thought leadership and not bought by spammy SEO tactics. And they are, for us in this research, an indicator of high quality content. Generally, backlinks act as a sort of an indicator and a filter. They're sort of pointing to a highly cited, highly linked content. From a publishing perspective, if you've got content and sites that are heavily backlinked, what that means is that you have a boost for your SEO, for your findability, for your organic traffic. That said, we found only a partial correlation or relationship between backlink volume and overall success. So it's not the only factor. Content still needs to work and demonstrate credible expertise. And indeed, I think it's probably that way round. You have the right good quality content and it tends to generate the backlinks rather than generate the backlinks and then write the content. For this reason, we think quality matters as much as quantity. There are clearly sources and linking sites that have a higher value than others. We were doing some work with various National Health Service organizations and looking at their websites, and they have astonishingly high backlink quality domain authority because they're being interlinked with other NHS organizations, and government organizations tend to have a higher domain authority, higher sort of backlink quality. So who links to you is also important, but it's all becomes a sort of virtuous circle. The better quality content, the better the backlinks. The better the backlinks, the more stuff is found, the better the value of the content to the business that's creating it. For brands that have good quality content but not yet the backlink profile, the challenge then becomes around getting the word out, getting that content out. So carefully coordinated PR, email marketing, social media marketing, and other types of marketing, other types of engagement can help put that content in front of people. For organizations like some of those NHS organizations I was mentioning earlier, where they've got the domain authority but haven't necessarily got the content, that's an easier problem to solve. Write the content. Okay. Surprising finding, because for most of the last 20 years, quantity has had a quality all of its own. But our findings for this report suggest that given a choice, prioritizing high quality and depth of content over frequency of publication is a good choice. That doesn't mean publish one high quality piece of content a year, although interestingly, in a completely different field, we have a former client in a professional services sector that literally, well, they have a blog now, but they almost do no other marketing except once a year they publish a huge essential reading report and get a huge amount of marketing and value from that. So maybe once a year is okay if you're them. So some examples, Withings, the IoT sort of health sensor company, publish detailed customer stories that have a lot of narrative value and a lot of inspirational value, but they're not very frequent. They've got a high score in our research. And our experience is that one authoritative piece can outperform dozens of shallow pieces. So if you've got a fixed budget, try to prioritize quality over quantity. Yeah, it's a pretty sort of obvious point. I would rather have 12 good articles a year than 50 articles a year. That's probably the proportion I would choose. Next point and recommendation here is write like your audience thinks. So think about the kinds of content your target audience persona, your ideal client profile, or profiles and personas if there's more than one, what they read, what kinds of things they're interested in, what kinds of challenges they have. So start with those personas and tune into them. So personas and tone of voice and editorial planning, publishing strategies, good editing that are aligning what you want to say and what you've got to say against what your audience wants to hear, wants to know. That mapping and alignment is critical. And the strongest thought leaders in the sector tune their content to the way that buyers and stakeholders think, search, and make decisions. They really are very good at avoiding the man in the mirror problem, and that takes a certain amount of experience, editorial discipline, and an intent, sometimes a bit of internal politics as well. Sometimes you have to persuade the boss that that's the right thing to do. It sometimes comes across, I don't say this specifically in health tech, but 20 something years of writing for technology companies, they tend to see carefully constructed content aimed at a persona that's not a technical buyer as dumbing down or not rigorous enough, and they want to tell you the detailed techie nerdy stuff. So that getting past that sometimes is a challenge, and translating the complex science or the complex technology with clear guidance, frameworks, tone of voice guidelines, and thinking about what is going to resonate with patients, with professionals, with potential buyers and buying decision makers. Also, and this is a difference from a lot of the online journalism now, being very clear about titles. I think meaning not writing jokey or spammy or hyped or sort of clickbait type titles. For example, Gut Health, What You Need to Know is probably a clearer title than, the 5 secrets gastroenterology something doctors aren't telling you about your gut, which might get more clicks on a Google search, but isn't necessarily lining up this expertise, authority, and trust. Actionable guides, checklists, explainers, things that help solve customer problems, help them through their buyer's journey. That's really important as well. Not all of thought leadership is at the top of the funnel. Some of it is really, really specific for people at a particular point in their buyer journey. And also, there are ways in which you can do quite self-serving content like product guides, data sheets, case studies in a way that still demonstrate thought leadership, are still editorially interesting and valuable, and have a little bit of a broader engagement, and that still signal relevance and credibility. And in fact, I'm increasingly convinced that there's a very blurry overlapping line between talking about your product and talking about thought leadership or generating thought leadership. Product pages are thought leadership pages, and thought leadership pages are almost product pages now. Buy me a beer and I'll get into that in more detail. Low performing companies, on the other hand, tend to be very narrowly focused, very over focused on a particular audience, like only writing case studies for people who are economic buyers in a particular sector, for example. They use overly technical titles, probably not overly clickbaity titles, and they're not providing actionable advice or helping people move their decision making on. They tend to be sort of just filling canyons full of BS, as a former editor of mine used to put it. So I hope that that's given some indication of what we see is working, and why we've selected, why we've identified these leaders. I would strongly urge you to go read the report if this is interesting, if I've said things that resonate. This report has detailed insights into the companies that are doing it, so you can go emulate. Companies that are not doing it, so you can avoid. And we've got lots more content on our website, webinars, and on the blog about how to actually implement some of these strategies. And if you want a personal, hands-on expert opinion, book up a meeting with me. I'd love to talk to you, and I will actually look at your thought leadership and give you some feedback. So that brings us to the end of this webinar. Surprisingly for me, I've managed to finish a little bit early, so you have a few minutes back. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for your attention. Have a fantastic and healthy 2026.